Hello and welcome to another video in this series where I cover every single Best Picture winner. Picking up where we left off, we are now starting the 1980s, a decade that on first glance doesn't look too interesting. After the variation of the films in the 1970s, which so far has been my favourite decade of this series, the long historical epics and personal family dramas that await me don't look as interesting. However, today I'm going to cover whether that's true, starting with the first 5 years of the 1980s. 53rd Academy Awards were held on the 31st of March 1981 and hosted by Johnny Carson, who we're going to see a lot more of in the videos to come. This ceremony was supposed to take place a few days earlier, however it was postponed due to the Ronald Reagan assassination attempt. Robert Redford was the third director to win for his debut film. Timothy Hutton was the youngest male actor to ever win a competitive acting award. And Fame became the first film to be nominated for 2 songs in one film. Other than the postponement, nothing particularly interesting that year in the ceremony itself. However, the same can't be said for the film. The winner was Ordinary People. I'm just going to get it out there that Empire Strikes Back was released this year. Didn't win. We knew it wouldn't. It's okay. This is not as good as Empire Strikes Back, but not many things are. To kick off this decade is a really simple film about a family where the son has died and the son was a clear favourite of the mother. We pick up just after he's died, the brother coping with the loss of a good friend of his, the mother trying to adjust without her favourite son and being left with the one that she's never really got along with too much, and the dad just trying to keep it all together. There are 3 fantastic performances in this that really make it worth checking out, and especially the mother. I feel like in fiction, you always see mothers depicted as just really strong and always there for the characters and always perfectly suited at being a mother, but that's not realistic. This opened my eyes to what it must be like to be a mother and not get along with your child. And I don't know, just have to deal with the loss of the one that you really like. So it was really powerful to see a mother depicted in anything but a complete shining light of perfection. I know that it's like not everybody is born to be one, you know? I don't know if that makes sense. However, arguably the most interesting character was the father, who throughout is just a rock in between the mother and the son, just trying to keep it all together. However, there is one scene where he does break down and you remember, oh wait, he's not perfect either. I would highly recommend this film. It's hard to watch it and not have some sort of emotional attachment to it, or not have your eyes open to what it's sort of addressing. And definitely worthy of Best Picture, even if Empire Strikes Back came out that year. Also very solid direction from Robert Redford, whose first time it was. 54th Academy Awards were held on the 29th of March 1982 and hosted by Johnny Carson for the 4th consecutive time. Warren Beatty became the first person to win for acting, directing, producing and screenwriting. Katharine Hepburn became the first and only actor to win 4 competitive acting awards. It is also the year where Best Hair and Makeup was introduced, and the first winner was Rick Baker for An American Werewolf in London. Fully deserved. The effects in that movie are insane. It's always interesting in this series seeing when certain awards enter the Oscars where you would have thought they would have existed throughout all of it, but also ones that have come and gone, such as like Best Assistant Director Award, which got scrapped quite early on. Because I suppose you have to make it an entertaining, not too long amount of time, but also have the impossible job of honouring the insane amount of crew that works on a film. The winner this year was Chariots of Fire. Are you English? Do you want to go to England? Watch this movie. There's an episode of iCarly, an American show, where One Direction come in, and One Direction have never sounded more English.
You think I should work him over with a butter sock?
You know, I really don't.
Did she say butter sock? Is that a sock? Full of butter?
Next to these typical American sounding actors, they just sound like the Queen or something. And I feel like this whole film is just that. There's not a moment watching it where you won't be like, I'm watching an English film. And other than that, there is nothing I really took away from this film at all. It's supposed to be a very inspirational story about sportsmanship and integrity and blah, 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 blah. But, oh, it's just so dull. Other than the iconic score and Mr. Bean parodied slow motion, there aren't too many iconic images from this that have survived the test of time. And I really don't think this will go on to be a classic any further than it has, because there's just not much to it. It's just sort of rich kids with very little problems. The 55th Academy Awards were held on April 11th, 1983. They were hosted by Eliza Minnelli, Dudley Moore, Richard Pryor and Walter Matthau. Louis Gossett Jr. became the first black man to win for Best Supporting Actor for An Officer and a Gentleman. I might not be saying this right, but Banu Atia became the first Indian to win for Best Costume Design. Until 2 years ago, this was the last time where the two highest grossing films of the year were nominated for Best Picture. I think the thing that broke it was Avatar and Top Gun Maverick. Now this is interesting. George C. Scott attended the Oscars for his first and only time. George C. Scott has such a strange relationship with the Oscars. He quoted once before that, you know, it was wrong for actors to compete against each other, but then also when Dustin Hoffman said a similar thing about the Oscars, he cast out Dustin Hoffman for saying that. So I really don't know where he lies with the Oscars, and now he's here. Anyway, the winner was Gandhi. Gandhi earned his spot amongst Oscar legends with astounding 8 wins that night. The second best winning at the Oscars was E.T., which I think is a much more fitting win for Best Picture, but that's not what this is about. The film stars Ben Kingsley as Gandhi. It's not a cradle to the grave story of his entire life. It's just sort of a documentation of the pivotal moments of his life where he managed to create a large amount of change until the end. What stands out here is definitely Ben Kingsley's performance. I've always been a fan of the man since I watched the film Sexy Beast, in which he is amazing. The costume design, the locations, the set dressing. It's an incredibly good looking film to watch, and one of those great epics of the 1980s that really has you breathtaking. Much like the film Ran 2 years later, the scale of this film is truly something to marvel at. The storytelling, however, I think is where it loses it a bit. The film clocks in at a whopping 3 hours and 11 minutes, and it does feel like that. I think it's always the risk when you do a biopic or cover a massive amount of a historical event that you sort of lose the point. In any historical event, there are so many different events that happen, and they don't necessarily all correlate in a nicely told story. And I think this sort of lost the point of what it was trying to say from beginning to end, and became a bit of a, I don't know, history lesson rather than a story or a, well, film. But nevertheless, there's plenty to keep you extremely entertained in this film, and if you fancy a big, large, good-looking film, then this is definitely the one for it. Also, fun facts. I worked with Ben Kingsley's son. I was the location marshal on a horror film where Ben Kingsley's son was playing the main character being haunted in this haunted house. And yeah, he looks a lot like him. Gandhi. Even though I didn't necessarily enjoy it very much, I wouldn't say it's a completely unworthy win, but E.T. is better.
No, he didn't mean everyone would be famous. You know, he was just generalising upon modern society. You know, people become famous for a little while, then they disappear. Like Rennie and Renata, Simon D.
Or Gandhi.
Yeah. So, see, maybe this time it's our...
Yeah. I mean, he made one great film and then he never saw him again.
The 56th Academy Awards were held on April 9th, 1984 and hosted by Johnny Carson. Fanny and Alexander became the most nominated foreign film at the time. Linda Hunt became the only person playing the opposite sex in a film to win an acting Oscar for The Year of Living Dangerously, or at least at the time was the only one. Irene Cara became the first black woman to win in a non-acting Oscar award for Best Original Song for Flashdance. Not too much going on that year, so let's skip straight to the winner. The winner was Terms of Endearment. This was the second highest grossing film of the year. The only film beating it being Return of the Jedi, which you can't blame. It just astounds me, especially looking back at the 80s, because it wasn't, you know, too long ago, how films like Terms of Endearment and Rain Man can be at the top of the box office. Now that is just completely unheard of. And if anything original like Oppenheimer or Barbie is at the top of the box office, it's still hardly a mid-budget family drama like this. Terms of Endearment sees one of my favourite actresses, Shirley MacLaine, playing the mother of a daughter, of which the two is the central relationship of this film. Much like Ordinary People, it's a very intimate film The performances definitely stand out, also with a great performance by Jack Nicholson. This is the sort of film I was sort of worried for going into the 80s, and unlike Ordinary People, I was kind of bored by this one. Although the drama and the heart of it sort of grew as it went on and did gain my interest, it just didn't stick out to me against all the great winners of this decade as something particularly interesting, nor one I remember too much of. I don't know, I'm sure this is some people's favourites, but it wasn't quite for me. Nevertheless, the beating heart of the film that is really strong until the end evokes emotion out of you even with a lack of interest. And I wouldn't write it off as something that's not worth checking out. I just don't particularly think it was worth winning, especially over Return of the Jedi. 57th Academy Awards were held on the 25th of March 1985 and hosted by Jack Lemmon. Peggy Ashcroft, at 77, became the oldest winner of the Best Supporting Actress award. Stevie Wonder became the first blind person to win an Oscar for the song Just Called to Say I Love You. In fact, this year is the only time in history where every single song in the Best Original Song category hit #1 on the Billboard 100 charts. That is an insanely impressive feat. And although the Best Picture winner of this year was all about music, it didn't quite have a song that would be on the Billboard Top 100 charts. That's because the winner is Amadeus. This and Passage to India led the Oscars by far with 11 nominations each. Amadeus is a film I've always wanted to watch but never quite checks out. I'm watching it on a really crappy DVD where I had to change it to a second one halfway through because it couldn't even be stored on one disc. Was honestly a very satisfying experience and lived up to my expectation. Much like Gandhi, this is a film on quite a large scale with an intense amount of detail put into the costume design and set and just recreation of an iconic time. However, here I think those talents are put to better use than Gandhi, as it's paired with a fantastic vision by the director and a very elegant way of filming that really brings out the beauty of the set and environment. Mark Hamill was originally thought of to play Mozart in this movie. However, after Star Wars, it seemed a bit of a gamble to put such a well-known person in that role who you couldn't really disassociate from Luke Skywalker. I do kind of see how Mark Hamill might have worked in this. However, I think Tom Hulce truly did kill it, and I couldn't imagine anyone else now. However, the standout performance here is not quite from Tom Hulce, but instead for the actor of Salieri, F. Murray Abraham. For a modern equivalency, I would cite Hamilton, with Aaron Burr telling the story of Hamilton. Here, Salieri guides you through this tale of how the most legendary composer of all time was kind of an arsehole. I mean, not totally, but quite an arrogant, thunder-stealing, very talented prick, if that's safe to say. Not that Salieri's perfect either. I feel like we tend to look at these legends like Mozart and hold them up to sort of perfection, whereas here it shows a very human side to both of them that maybe we don't want to remember. However, it leaves this film that in itself feels more like a classical piece of music. I'm not an expert in classical music, so I don't know what the comparison is, but I think they were going for some sort of rhapsody sort of thing, or an opera where it's just has these acts and ends on them very dramatically and is woven throughout with these incredible classical pieces that just, I don't know, makes it feel more like a performance than something that's been filmed and edited together. And for that, it is extremely impressive and holds up incredibly well. In fact, it feels like one of those films, a bit like some silent films, that the more they age, the better they become. Because the older they are, the less you sort of can believe that they were something that was actually made. They just seem like something that existed, you know? From start to finish, it is extremely entertaining, and the length is by no means a hindrance to the film, like quite a few Best Picture winners.
Dr. Sayers, Dr. Sayers, Dr. Sayers, Dr. Sayers.
So that's it for the first half of the 1980s. Sorry it's taken me so long to get to it. I'm now fully up to date with the movies I've watched and the videos I've done. So I'm going to carry on now next with Out of Africa, all the way till, what's the last movie? Driving Miss Daisy, I think, which I'll cover in the next video. Thanks for watching. I hope off the back of this you want to watch Amadeus and Ordinary People and check out the rest. Can't say I'd recommend Chariots of Fire, but can't say I'd stop you from watching Terms of Endearment or Gandhi. Thanks for watching. See you next time.